Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome our next amazing guest, Miss Sacha Awwa, and she is a digital marketing specialist. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about being here.
I am super excited to have this conversation with you today. You are the founder of the SAMG marketing group. And so we're going to talk all things digital marketing and growing businesses and what the big companies know that maybe the small companies don't. But before we get into all that and how and why you started your business, why don't we go back a little bit further than that? You've held CMO roles, you've held marketing advisory roles in your career, but definitely all focusing on that marketing side of industry. But what drew you into e-commerce, digital marketing? How did you get into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in marketing for about 22 years to date. And what really drew me into creating the agency that I have now is the crux of my career that happened at a large media company, which was the New York Times, right? So I worked at advertising agencies, I've worked in-house for other companies. And the premise of really driving into this was the excitement of building something from the ground up. Also, on the heels of a lot of startups coming into play, I noticed that I wanted to get out of the media world and kind of penetrate into the startup world to really learn the ropes of further being able to build something from ground up, specifically as it relates to not working for a legacy company that basically has been around forever and you have a little bit more leverage at times. So that's really how it started. And really because we had McKinsey and Company that came to the New York Times to help us grow our trajectory to 10 million subscribers. So it was understanding what were we going to do to open up different arms of revenue, hence the crossword app, the food app, the podcast, and a bunch of other things that I had the privilege of working on and pushing to market. It was the concept of really tapping into what McKinsey was doing, because if you've ever worked for them, they're like the men in black that come to your office and sit in a corner. But I was able to tap in and understand their strategy and take that strategy along with me and inject that into the startup world.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you that way, McKinsey. Yes, I have worked with some clients who were also working with McKinsey, and it is very much that way. They feel like it's almost like a hit squad, right? They come in and
Yeah.
they get under the bonnet, and they almost make you. It's the classic consultants scenario, the classic business consultant scenario where they find problems across the whole company, and then they're like, "Hey, we found all these problems, but we can help you solve them." And that's a good business model for them for sure, and they're definitely part of that whole big consulting group mindset and model. But I think what's really cool about what you did is you tried to distill the essence of what they did and what they uncovered in the company you were working at, and tried to distill that down into something meaningful for smaller businesses than that. Because very few startups, very few small businesses can afford a McKinsey or a Bain or whatever it be. They can't afford MBB, basically. And as a result of that, they feel like sometimes these strategies are out of touch and out of reach for them. And so to try to bring that down and distill that down into something actionable for your clients, pretty cool thing to try to do. It's a big ask because you got this giant funnel, giant resources, big spend up at the top with MBB. And then you have this constrained resource model of the startup world and of small business world.
Yes.
How did you start to create actionable insights for these smaller businesses that didn't take massive resources to execute on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you. I have a 3-part phase model that I work with all of my clients in a majority of the startups. And you are right. It's constrained. When the going gets tough, they're like, we're cutting out of marketing, we're running away. And I'm like, that's what you should not be doing as a small business owner. So what I basically do, what I noticed with working in-house with a bunch of startups prior to starting my company, SAMG, which just stands for Sacha Awwa Marketing Group, was really the concept of a lot of them start their business and they just go 100 miles an hour, right? So they don't even think about the phase 1, which is what I call the foundation of your business, right? It's really understanding, who you're going after, who are your ideal customer profile. A lot of them are like, I built this product or service, this is my customer, and I'm going after them. They think that they just have one profile. of a customer. When there's a multitude of different profiles of customers, you have maybe 2 or 3 different tiers of customers, so on and so forth. So they don't really spend the time to build out the business's foundations, the brand foundations, in terms of really putting it on paper and staring at it and understanding what their mission, their vision is. What I like to call the 4 Ws, like why you do what you do, who you do it for, what you do, and the way you do it. And it's crazy because that becomes, for a lack of a better term, your Bible in terms of how you're going to build out your content, how you're going to go forward, what you're going to do into the next phase, how you're going to grow. A lot of this foundational part is never set up. Marketing tech stack tools are not set up. They have a website. They're collecting emails. They're probably in business for 2 to 3 years. Their emails are somewhere. And that is a gold mine. If you're not building your list to sell to your list, what are you doing? Right. And so it's really ensuring that first foundation and that you're basically laying the bricks in the right manner, because if you're not, a hurricane's going to come through and it's just going to blow you away. So that doesn't take a lot of money. It takes a lot of foundation kind of strategy work to get there. And I think it's fine because a lot of the times, or if you're a product that is penetrating into the market and you haven't done, like, how do you stack up against your competitors? Who are your direct competitors? Because what I love about marketing also is that you can borrow from other industries. You shouldn't just be focusing on a one-track lane. If you're in the beverage industry, what are the beverage industries doing versus so on and so forth? Let's talk about the beverage industry. There's Liquid Death that we all know that was just basically water and a metal can, right? And they really started to hit the heavy metal concerts and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't spend a lot of money when they first came out to market. But there's something that you can learn about grassroots marketing and translate that into, how do I find where my clients are hanging out en masse and how do I hit them? Versus just putting out a digital ad where if I don't even have $2,000 at a minimum to spend, how can I go out into the real world and really start to have communication? So really phase one is setting up the foundation before you even think about any kind of money that you're going to spend in market.
From there are definitely some parallels here in what I do, which is that some of the foundational work hasn't been done before a client engages me.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one example, and I'd love your thoughts on this. So I'll go in and they'll maybe ask me to come in and help them scope out a new e-commerce platform or a new ERP or a new CRM. They want me to come in and basically give them guidance on ops and tech. And they go, cool, you can come in, you can do discovery, you can help us architect this whole thing. And one of the first questions I ask as part of discovery is, how much customer research have you done? How many conversations have you had with customers? Have you asked them if they want you to offer e-commerce? Have you asked them what e-commerce even means to them? Have you asked them what kind of digital services they would like you to offer beyond the transaction? Because at the end of the day, most of the projects that I'm involved with, they're $1, $2, $3, $4, $500,000 projects. And before you go down the path of dumping a whole lot of money into something, isn't it better to do your homework first and make sure it's actually fit for purpose? But most of these businesses, they're so inward facing and so inward looking that the main goals of these projects are to make them more efficient, to make selling easier for them, to cut head count for them. Not that they're not outward facing and outward thinking about what kind of solutions will make their customers' life better, their customers more efficient at what they do in procurement. And so I feel this theme of foundational research, it's a through line that happens to almost all of us that are in for lack of a better term, the consulting world. It's just that this foundational research, it feels like it goes right over their head because it's just something that's never crossed their mind. And I'm guessing that you encounter the exact same thing.
It's never crossed their minds. And I think what a lot of agencies do is they approach it to the client and they give them a line item and they say strategy work, X amount of thousands of dollars, right? And then they're like, no, I don't want to pay for that. What's my return on investment?
Yeah.
So what I've done is just weaved it into the work where it's like they are being charged for it, but it's not an upfront sort of cost, but it's baked into everything that we're doing. Because a lot of the times clients are like, I want you to do a digital campaign for me. Okay, why do you want me to do a digital campaign for you? What are your goals? What are your this? I ask them questions back because I'm again not, and I'm imagining you're the same way where it's like, we're not just focusing on, we're not a said company that just does digital marketing. We're not a said company that just grows your social media or that grows your LinkedIn account. We're not specified in those particular lanes. Can we do everything from an activity under marketing? Absolutely. But the core of what we're pushing out is really getting to the crux of understanding where are you bleeding out from. If you basically have hit a plateau, where can we stop that hemorrhaging, and where can we fix it, optimize it, and get you back into market? Because there is probably a problem that you didn't do XYZ when you launched your company, which is why you're hemorrhaging right now. That costs a lot of money. That costs a lot of money to businesses to have to backtrack. So that's why if I get a company at its infancy stage and I set them up, they're cruising and they're sailing.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
It's easier to, I use the saying with my clients, let's measure twice, cut once, because once you cut, difficult to join the board back together again.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's always better to spend a little bit more time upfront doing a proper discovery, doing proper due diligence, doing proper customer research, doing proper channel strategy planning.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, now when we start to do the architecture, when we start to do platform search and select, when we start to do partner implementation, partner search and select, it all is a natural consequence of all that upfront work that we did. Because I try to tell my customers, look, I operate on the 80-20 rule. I'll take your requirements, because usually if they engage with an agency before they engage with someone like us, the agency is going to want to get right into gathering requirements and then doing the doing. Because once they get a project into the engine room, that's when they start making money. That upfront work, that upfront discovery work, design work, whatever, that's usually not a profit center for most agencies. It's once it gets into the engine room of production that they start making money. So they want to get through that front piece as soon as humanly possible. Whereas that front piece is all I do. And so that's where business model makes a difference too, in terms of who you engage with and in what order. And I feel like engaging with someone like us, you specializing in marketing, me specializing in more tech and ops, either way, engaging with someone who specializes in that upfront messy bit where they don't know what their requirements are, otherwise they wouldn't need you to begin with. And helping them identify their requirements, helping them document their requirements, asking super smart questions so that you get really smart answers out of them. I think discovery is an art, and I've seen people in our industry that do it really amazingly well, and I've seen people that are pretty average at it. And I'd like to think that over the last 25 years, I've just gotten better and better at it the longer I've done it. But it does take an element of experience to be able to pull these nuances out of our clients. Do you find that too?
Oh, yeah, totally. Because a lot of the times I think you're asking them questions that they thought that they already knew. And then you're putting them in a position where, either they've been in business for X amount of years and they're probably kicking themselves behind the poker face of them just going, oh my God, I'm like in a situation that I didn't have to be in. And now I'm here. And this is exactly why I'm hemorrhaging. So it's like an aha moment for them. And then I feel once you get over that, if somebody has approached you, they're willing to make a change, right? But if there is this kind of block, then that's on them, right? It's like how I like to say that a lot of business owners can sometimes be in their own way to allow their business to succeed. So it's get out of your way, let the people who you're hiring do the work that you're doing, and then we can move forward. So sometimes it's a lot of tug and pull, but I think that a lot of the clients that have come my way, it's a deer caught in a headlight. They're super excited, but they're super confused at the same time. And it's a great kind of segue in, but I think the education part coming from us is very important, because don't inundate them with the high level piece of marketing, but explain to them how we're going to get there. And then it clicks. And that's when you get them on your side, if that makes sense.
Definitely does. And how do you balance? Because especially in the digital marketing world, even more so than in the world I play in, there is this need to balance the long-term strategic work that needs to go in around branding, positioning, pricing, go-to-market strategy, all that stuff, with short-term, low-hanging fruit wins that help to fund the more long-term activities that you have to ultimately get to. Yes, we can't always have just pure short-term thinking. We can't always have just paid and performance marketing, because that is demand capture. It's not demand gen. We know we need to be creating a long-term demand generation pipeline for our businesses. So how do you balance that? Because I'm guessing that when you're called in, oftentimes the bosses, the CEOs, the leaders, the founders, they're going, hey, look, we want to pull the fastest levers we can pull. We want to bring in as much cash as we can, especially with the economy being the way that it is now, with so much uncertainty in the market. So how do you balance that need to capture some of that low-hanging fruit to create the credibility with these business owners that you know what you're doing, whilst also knowing in the back of your mind, this is almost like a quick hit drug that is not going to have the long-term effect that this business thinks it's going to have without the longer-term strategic activities that we know we have to do to underpin all this.
It's data. Data is king. And when you're dealing with CEOs and the C-suite level of some of these companies, if you show them the data, you show them where they're hemorrhaging, then they're like, oh shit, okay. And for me, it's all about data. Your chess move is in the data. Knowing whether you go left, I know we don't go right and left in chess, but knowing how to get to the end, it's through the data. And so what I basically do very quickly, for example, I just signed on a little bit of an infancy stage client in the e-commerce world, in the pet industry. Two young guys, very excited about where their company could go, so on and so forth. And they're like, we really want to focus on Facebook. I'm like, that's great, but let's take a look at your whole company holistically, right? So I spent 3 weeks. I looked into their Google Analytics. I looked into their Klaviyo Analytics. I looked into their Shopify Analytics to make connections between the two platforms, because if you're a marketer listening to this, you understand that Google Analytics can have some discrepancies. So then how do we make that up through Shopify, through Klaviyo, so on and so forth? So just drawing through lines in terms of what's working for them in terms of what they've already been running, what's not working. And there's a heck of a lot of things that they're not doing that they should be doing that is going to support the spend that they're doing in Facebook. I'm all for them wanting to do Facebook, but then I also gave them a full list of things that they also could be doing, right? But that opens up their eyes, because they're like, yeah, we dabbled a little bit into looking at our reports on Klaviyo or on Google Analytics, but it's like, it's not hitting them because they don't know how to tell the story through the data. And that's where we come in as marketers, is we're able to uncover the story and say, yes, you're having a crap ton of traffic coming to your site, but it's not converting. Or you had a little bit of traffic come to your site based on this one ad, but it converted at 72% and you spent X on a cost per click and then actual cost per acquisition. So it's like understanding what that means is not really a click. But a long answer to your question is data is king. And if you can basically ask them to give you, depending on how large the company is, anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks to do a very quick audit at a high level. And if they like what, for you to go even further and to make those notations, we can go further to find out X, like within your documentation and findings, then I think you win them even further, because then it teaches them to continuously have these conversations around data, because they need to be spending the money where it's working and just X everything else that's not working. It's like a lot of companies are like, we need a social media account. Your social media account's not going to convert for you. It's a nice to have. Don't focus on the nice to haves right now. Focus on what's going to generate ROI. And that's talking their language.
Yeah. And I think also sometimes, especially smaller e-commerce businesses and startup e-commerce businesses, they don't understand contribution margin. Yeah. They don't understand unit economics. They don't understand what they might understand what an AOV is, but they don't understand what CLV is and even how to calculate it. And they certainly don't know how to calculate that by acquisition channel. And they certainly don't know how to calculate that by net profit by customer level. They don't know how to do those things. And if you don't know what the metrics are that are actually the drivers of the levers that are actually going to grow your business, it's hard for these business owners to know where to focus, because typically they're really good at product development and trying to find product market fit. And they're usually really good at marketing, meaning their personal brand. They usually understand what that means, and they usually understand that they have to be a visible founder, a visible face of the company. But they're not financial controllers. They're not CPAs. They're not data analysts. Usually, they're definitely not data scientists. And so it's really hard for them to go, look, I would love to focus on the metrics that matter, but I don't know actually what those are. Apart from maybe conversion rate, maybe the total traffic number by channel. Maybe they understand ROAS. Maybe they understand MER. Maybe. But the reality is they don't also start to connect the dots between two customers that in the data look identical, meaning, okay, cool, over a 12-month span, these two customers have driven the exact same amount of revenue through our business. But if they looked deeper into that and they looked into their Gorgeous data and they looked into their Klaviyo data, they looked into their Shopify data, they would realize that customer A calls us on or an average of 3 times per order. Customer A has a return rate that's double customer B. Customer A has a propensity to discount 60% of the time. Customer B has a propensity to discount 20% of the time. So the net revenue, the net margin that each of these two customers give you is very different as a business. And the cost to serve each of those two customers is very different. But if you don't know to look at those things, so that when you start doing your segmentation, you're segmenting out the low profitability customers and you're segmenting in your high profitability customers. If you don't know to do that and you don't know which KPIs of those customers to look at when you're doing those calculations and when you're trying to calculate CLV, it's like you're fumbling around in the dark.
Yes, totally. And I love that you say that a lot of clients like know that they have to be the face of their brand. This wasn't the case for one client that came up with a genius concept. They were both very successful in the music industry, right? They wanted to stop what was happening to Taylor Swift from the get-go of beginning of artists, right? So artists and music makers, they don't know how to read legal documents. They don't know any of that kind of stuff. They get into the industry. They're so excited. Anything comes their way. It's the panting dog ready to grab onto that treat, right? And that they're like, here's a contract. And they're like, okay. And they basically sign it. And lo and behold, they've completely signed their entire life away, right?
Yes.
And so they basically created a platform and a system whereby they can help these singers, songwriters, music makers, so on and so forth, understand the legal language. Now, these guys were like 2 older guys, and I'm like, you gotta get out. You gotta have the conversation. So what they did was something very cool. Was if anybody was around in terms of MTV in the early 90s, and if you think about all the 2D kind of animations that were happening that were MTV style, they did that in terms of storytelling for like their courses and stuff, which was great. They spent a lot of money doing that, right? At the beginning, do not spend that kind of money. I don't care if you have it, if the investors have it. You basically need to go out with one angle. Don't confuse your audience. Get them to hook them into one particular course or whatever it is you're offering and show your face. I don't care if you're a 70-year-old guy sitting on the upper west side of New York City. People want to see who's behind the scenes. They don't want to see a caricature of you. And that's the problem, right? They're like, oh, but we're like these older like dudes. One of them was like a music industry lawyer. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so it's like hitting sometimes, like I said, clients sometimes or business owners are in their own way to create success for their own company and they don't even realize it.
Yeah. And I honestly question, because some of the clients I deal with, I've long since stopped dealing with the B2C and D2C world. So I've really focused heavily on the B2B world, which is very relationship driven anyway. But
yes,
I found that when I was more heavily involved in the B2C and D2C world, a lot of founders would say, I'm shy, I'm an introvert, I know how to create great products, but I don't really want to be the face of my brand. I don't want to be out there. I don't want to be visible. I don't want to be on social. I don't want to be on LinkedIn. I don't want to be anywhere. And I'm like, then you probably are not going to make a great business owner. You're probably not going to make a great founder. You're probably not going to see the success that you think you're going to see, because as of 2025 or 2020, that's what's required today. In most instances, not 100% of the time, but in most instances, people don't want to be doing business with a nameless, faceless brand. They want to know what's behind the brand. They want to know what the ethos is behind the brand. They want to know something about the social conscience that the brand has, the sustainability that the brand has, or just whatever the position of the brand is, or whatever the opinion of the brand is. They want to know what that is, so that it resonates with them and they feel some sort of an emotional connection with the brand, because they can choose from 1,000 brands today. But I think that modern founders, if you are not prepared to put your stamp of ownership on the brand, if you're not so proud of what you're doing that you're willing to be a visible part of the go-to-market, then either one of two things needs to happen. Either you need to not do it, because it's almost like it's like the first hurdle you need to get past, or you need to partner with someone that can and partner with someone that is willing to be that face of the brand. I don't know about you, but at least for me, I wouldn't have the business I have without a 25-year personal brand. I just wouldn't have it. And I'd be spending an absolute fortune to acquire customers if I didn't have a full pipeline because of my personal brand. Because I put out, etc. And so I think that, okay, maybe you can do it, but the cost of not being a human facing brand is just exponentially increases the complexity and the cost of getting to market.
Yeah, it's detrimental. And really post COVID has developed this stronger kind of community of people. And I don't care if you sell swimsuits down to like B2B SaaS platform, but people want to know, why did you build it? How did you build it? Do you understand my needs? Do you understand what I want out of this platform, or so on and so forth? And really start having conversations with your community. Community is huge, and community is one marketing platform, not like your said company's community that, everybody goes in and has their own conversations together. That's never something that you utilize for marketing, but penetrating into other communities that are struggling, whereby you could start to have conversations with them and say, hey, I have a solution, guys. A lot of people aren't doing that. LinkedIn communities, especially like for B2B, are one of the best communities that you can start having conversations with, just to start to create that funnel of people moving over. And it's wild. It really is, as I continue to mention, it's just founders getting in their own way, founders thinking that they understand how marketing works because whatever has been floated by them, whatever marketing platforms or so on and so forth that has been introduced to them through Facebook or Instagram, or just being on like the web and so on and so forth. There is just this concept of, okay, this is how I connect the dots, but they don't really understand the nuts and bolts of like how it actually works. And it amazes me how so many times when the going gets tough, marketing budget is the first one to get slashed. And if take us a step back, go back into COVID, I don't want to have to go back there, but go back there and really look at the companies that didn't cut their marketing budget and the ones that strategized, they flourished.
Yeah.
And the ones that didn't, they fell and they crumbled and they closed because they didn't reinvent themselves. Now, I'm not saying that everybody could have survived, but everybody could have survived in a way. I wish I had my company around because it was fully based on strategy and being able to have conversations, even with restaurants and people who had brick and mortars. Like, how are you going to switch over, still having people show up individually to your front door, and maybe create a window where you're servicing these people, or you're servicing people picking up from you, and that's about it. But how do we flip our business on its head and strategize how we can now serve our customers in the mindset that they're in right now? And that's something that happened. Like I remember I was consulting with a company that had courses for solo and partnership law firms in terms of how to get them from 100,000 a year to 250 to 500 to a million and plus. And he was an ex-lawyer and shouting on top of his head, basically to tell lawyers, do not quit your game now, because the lawyers that will continue to move forward in this time are the ones that will come out on top versus the ones that are like freaking out and like they're sitting in the corner of their office. My law firm is going to fall apart. Like, we came up with this genius concept of, it was called the give a shit list. And what we did was we had our law firms that were still engaging with us call clients that they had dealt with in the past before COVID, just to ask them, how is your family and how are you doing? And they gained business from that.
Yeah.
It's just community.
Yeah.
And it's really gathering together, and then it's flipping that coin over.
I want to give you two examples, and then I'd love your take on it. I have mentioned this on the podcast before. When I lived in New Zealand before we moved to Mexico 2.5 years ago, I bought off of an online alcohol retailer, and I'm really into bourbon. And I had bought with them for 2-3 years pretty consistently. Every month or two, I would place an order with them online. I would try their new releases. I would try new products. I was a very regular routine customer with them and spent thousands of dollars a year with them. Now, when we moved to Mexico, all of a sudden, just cold turkey, one day I stopped ordering off them because they're a New Zealand-based website shipping to New Zealand. But I never got a phone call from them. I never got an email from them. It blows my mind that you can churn as an e-commerce business. You can churn a customer that has been a loyal customer for years and has spent thousands of dollars with you. They disappear off the face of the planet, and you don't want to know why. You don't want to know if it's because you don't carry the thing that they want anymore, or because you fell down on the service level one time and they decided to go somewhere else. that there was a competitor that came into market that offered something better than you, that they died, the fact that these businesses, and I spend a significant amount of the money that I spend in market is spent online, and I've always been that way.
Yeah.
I have never had a company contact me after the fact, after a purchase, after a sale, after I've churned. I've never had one of these companies pick up the phone, ring me, and say, "Hey, what was your experience like? Hey, how did you find us? Hey, what emotionally, how did you feel about doing business with us? What did you think of our delivery service? Was it fast? Was it efficient? Did it keep you informed throughout the process? Would you recommend us? Would you buy from us again? Why did you stop buying from us?" The reality is very few customer service teams are a bit busy 100% of the time. So the reality is that I would say greater than 90% of the time, they are reactive to what's happening and what's coming in, live chats, emails, phone calls, etc. But they always have some time to make outbound connections and outbound calls and outbound emails and personalize those and have that personal human connection. But the fact that no one has ever done that with me blows my mind. I'm so shocked. And when you were talking about community, I was thinking, hey, look, I've started to spend a lot more time on Quora. I've started to spend a lot more time on Reddit, answering questions, being in the subreddits, joining subreddits, trying to learn from these communities, trying to be part of these communities, trying to start my own communities in these places. I've already gotten business from Reddit just because I'm one of the very few. I think it's like probably 0.1% of people on Reddit have open profiles that are not aliases. So my profile is open. I use my real name. I use links to my real LinkedIn profile, for example. I use real links to my real website. So you get cut through in some of these communities just by being a real human being. Whereas on Reddit, 99+% of people on Reddit are behind an alias and you don't actually know who that person is. So I'd love your take on two things. One is scaling the unscalable, which is what businesses don't try to do often enough, a la we don't make phone calls to our churned customers to find out what the hell happened. And two, where we can find these communities online that we can be a part of, that a natural byproduct of being part of those communities generally means a little more business.
And when you say scaling the unscalable, talk to me a little bit about that in terms of which part you're talking about of the...
So I think most e-commerce businesses and brands think, oh, we don't have the resources to be able to make those kind of phone calls.
Okay, I see. You got to get creative and really, whoever is in the company, whether it's a marketer or your C-level team, the folks that you've hired, one of the questions that you really need to be asking people that you bring into the team is give them a scenario and really try and understand like how they're gonna work through that scenario. I'll give you an example of like scaling the unscalable, right? I walked into a startup 4 years in New York, doing amazing. They had 4 million subscribers in their system already, albeit they're a freebie company where we worked with big CPG companies to basically send out free products to XYZ person, because what we did was we had 25 different fields on each person's profile, which actually means that we were a data company at the end of the day, right? So if CPG company came to us and said, I want to get my product in front of X person, we had that profile. The person who had X kids, a dog under the age of so on and so forth, or if Clairol was like, I want to only talk to blonde women versus brunette women and so on, we had that because we had 25 different fields. But what was our problem? We did unboxing every first Tuesday of the month that basically showed our audience, this is what could potentially be coming your way. Now, John Smith and Jane Smith may get two different samples in their boxes because John may have one profile versus Jane, and there may be some female-oriented products that don't necessarily need to go to John, so on and so forth, right? Now, one of our biggest problems is that I had one person that was managing the company's social media on top of our partnerships, posts, and interactions with our customer base. And then if you think about 4 million people on a sample Tuesday, hundreds of thousands of comments coming in from the morning to the evening. And if said person doesn't get responded to, even if they just posted an emoji, don't you think they're going to feel a little sad? Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I thought about it. I'm like, customer service in this country is so expensive. And for those of you listening who are international, I'm talking about the US. You go and hire customer service from an international company. where we've all experienced it, the ones that are basically, how should I say, calling from India or the Philippines and so on and so forth. And nothing against that. I have some folks on my team that are in the Philippines, Pakistan, and India, and they are amazing tech folks, right? But if it comes down to customer service and you're asking somebody to read off a script, if you're a very catchy and cute company, it's not going to work. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who used to work with me at the New York Times, and she was like, "Oh yeah, she had just given birth, and she was like, I'm part of this like moms community that's like all over the U.S." And she was like, "I wouldn't have survived, so on and so forth." Oh, okay. Hung up the phone, didn't think anything of it. Hours later, I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, I need to hire these moms. I'm like, I need to hire moms to be my customer service reps. And I'm like, especially if they're just sitting at home doing nothing. Like, women love to do stuff, and like women are actually the best kind of customer service because it's innate in them to care.
Yeah, they
Especially
have the empathy gene nailed.
the empathy gene. Thank you. So I called her the next day and I was like, I'd love to hire 7 moms for the price of one person in New York City. And I will pay them New York City minimum wage, which I think at that time was like $14.15. I want them working X amount of hours a day, so on and so forth. And some of these, what was so nice was that some of these women ended up coming to me and saying we were able to go out and buy a second home because of the extra income that was coming. So A, I was supporting them as a family. B, I was able to basically clean up all of our customer service within 30 days that was backtracked. I had a system where I could see everything that was happening. I built a script of questions that were for our customers, for us. This is how you respond. This is our tone, so on and so forth. And every time after Sample Tuesday, within 24 hours, all of our comments were answered to, even if it was just somebody who had an emoji, right? And we grew in a year and a half from 4 million to 6 million. That's no marketing. That's me just hiring people. So if you
Yes.
think about marketing as a channel, believe that customer service could potentially be your marketing channel, especially if you don't have a budget to go out and create a marketing campaign, because our lifetime value, we could only spend 75 cents per lead coming in. So where do you want me to go and do marketing that is going to equate to 75 cents per lead?
Yes. Yes. Why don't we leverage our existing community, but just treat them so damn well that they become our advocate.
Exactly.
They become our marketing team.
Exactly. So that's leveraging and like really growing what you don't think can be grown, in the sense of get creative, understand that this is X scenario. How can we think outside of the box to really fulfill a gap at a high impact, but a lower cost? And there are a lot of people. I'm not the only person that thinks like this. There's a lot of people that can think creatively. And I think that piece of the pie in terms of who you hire and who you bring in is extremely important, because today it is so competitive out there. But that's not to say that you can't get a piece of the ocean. Of course you
Yeah.
can. But how are you going to get a piece of the ocean? By making noise. It's not by having Nike budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of these companies
Guerrilla
have
marketing.
Nike's budget, right? And I go back to the silly water in a can, and it's not so silly because it's like, honestly, the last time I was at a concert and I put a koozie over it, that water stayed cold versus any like flimsy plastic bottle that was like dead and warm within 20 minutes. Liquid Death was genius, right? So they were genius to come up with the product, and they were genius in terms of how they brought it into market. So that's what I do a lot with the clients that I work with, because my passion is startup. My passion is small business. And it is this a little bit of, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? Because a lot of startup, and it's volatile to work with these type of companies. But I find that from the beginning, if I educate them and if I tell them, listen, we cannot quit. And I'm not telling you this because I need your money. I'm telling you this because I want you to survive and thrive. If I lose you as a client, it's not going to break me financially. But if you walk out on the work that we do for 3 months just because things are not moving for you, then you've lost. This is a marathon, and you need to invest and you need to keep pushing, because there will be that day where there's that tipping point, and then you just soar from there. But it's going to be up and down. Marketing is a roller coaster. The purchasing power is a roller coaster. There's seasonalities, there's ups and downs. It's never a constant. If it was a constant, we'd all be making a ton of money. So it's sticking to it and sticking to your belief and really moving through that process, which is what's going to make you successful as a business owner.
Yeah. To your point, I was making content for probably close to 10 years before I really started to see massive traction. But it was consistency. It was showing up every single day. It was posting to LinkedIn every single day. It was being in communities like the Reddits, the Cores of the world, answering as many questions as I possibly could, being active in these communities. It was creating posts online across all sorts of different social platforms. It was creating videos. It was starting a podcast. It was a flywheel. When I look back across all the content types and formats and places that I've ultimately ended up distributing content, when I look at that, the sheer volume of content is pretty overwhelming. It's thousands of posts. It's hundreds of videos. It's over 530 podcast episodes now. And when people look at that and they feel, I was on the line with a platform vendor the other day. They're going to be running a conference this year in New York. And we were talking about me being the MC of the conference for the B2B tracks. And the first thing that the North American director for the company said to me when we jumped on the call, he said, "You are freaking everywhere. I cannot escape you. It doesn't matter which freaking platform I log into. I see crap from you everywhere. It's like you feel like you're omnipresent. Doesn't matter whether it's freaking YouTube, LinkedIn, doesn't matter where I go.
That's
I
great.
feel like I see your content everywhere." And he said, "Whatever you're doing something right, just keep doing that." And I was like, "Yeah, look, I've been doing it for a very long time now." So for these people, he said, "I've been seeing your content for at least a year." And I said, "It's interesting because I've been putting out content at scale for over a decade now. And I still spend today eight plus hours a week on content alone."
Yeah.
And I said, "But the thing is, these people think that you came out of nowhere, right? They think that you just appeared. But what does that say? 10 years or a decade to become an overnight success? It's literally that. If you don't give up, then you can't lose if you don't give up."
Yeah.
But most people, in my experience, they are not willing to put in the work for a long. I release 3 podcast episodes a week.
Yeah.
Most people, and I've been doing that for years. Most people are not prepared to put in that level of work for the long game level of success that they want to achieve. So it really comes down to how bad do you want it?
Totally. I totally agree with you. And it is what I love sometimes about that launch day when you're working with clients is you work towards all these type of things. Everything is ready. And all of a sudden, okay, today is launch. And then it falls flat for them because there is this constant like buildup of like excitement to get to market. Right. But a lot of the times what happens is at launch is when the work begins. At launch is when you really start to test and learn and find out what is your product market fit. It's not just because you built all of this, your content and the way you communicate about your business and your one-liners and so on and so forth. That's not to say it could fall flat and it's not going to work. We have to test it now to understand if it's going to work. And they think just because all this work was done, that they just feed it into the market and the floodgates open. It's not how it works. And yes, it can be very daunting and stressful. And we've been going at this for a year and we're not seeing anything and all this kind of stuff, but it's stick with it. Stick with it. And that's why a lot of the times, like I tell my clients, it doesn't matter what industry they're in. I'm like, build a community. Talk to them like they're part of your growth. Talk to them like you're building this for them. I have a client who's
because they are. Sorry to interrupt. Not as if they are.
Thank
but
you.
They are.
Thank you, because they are. If we think about the big F-ups of major industries like Sonos, for example, who ended up changing the way one of their system works from an upgrade, they ended up losing like their CEO, their I don't know who. They ended up letting go of like close to 250 people because people were like, forget Sonos, I'm moving to a different speaker platform, like all this kind of stuff. And it's just because they didn't listen to their customers, just because they didn't listen to what the one feature that their customers enjoyed, they decided to nick and get rid of. That's a big no-no. If you have a product that people love and you're not focusing, to your point, what you said, I'm surprised nobody has reached out to me as someone who is an avid buyer. It's wild to me. And I mean, like these 2 young guys in the pen industry, I told them and I said, look at who buys from you the most. Talk to them. Actually send them an email and say, because you're a valued customer, here's a code for you and here's a code for your friend. Because it's not creepy. You notice them. It's not Big Brother-ish. It's, oh my God, I feel seen. Everybody wants to feel seen. Everyone does.
The cheers effect. Gotta have it.
It is the cheers effect. Even these like silly samples that we were sending to people's homes. Some woman had breast cancer and she ended up telling one of my moms that I hired, that our box makes her so happy since she had gotten breast cancer. It's these little things that change somebody's lives that you just have to you have to tap into that emotional IQ. And a lot of businesses don't have that emotional IQ. And again, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. People can have the option to either buy from you or for someone else, but it really depends how you connect with them and how you really leverage their pain point that is really going to solve for them. And it's trust. And that's why I say community is huge, because if you're not building a community based on what you have built for that customer, why are you even in business?
Yeah.
Why are you even in business?
Wow. Couldn't agree more. This has been, we've dug deep into some pretty esoteric areas, and I love that. I love the fact that we haven't just scratched the surface. We've gotten into really, truly what makes a business tick. And if you go into business thinking, oh, cool, I'm going to create something that's a money printing machine, if that's your sole focus, it's probably going to elude you. If you go into it with more of a heart of empathy, a heart of kindness, a heart of caring, a heart of wanting to solve real problems, wanting to add real value, wanting to create really valuable conversations, and wanting to be part of the community that you're trying to serve, then I think, and it's even better if you're already naturally part of the community that you're trying to serve. It's trying to insert yourself into a community is difficult unless it's natural for you to do. So I'm almost all the online communities that I'm a part of, I would be there anyway, whether I had my consulting business or not, because those communities are things that I'm interested in. And so I feel like we've touched on some really important, what most people would consider fluffier topics, as opposed to, okay, do this with Meta, do this with Google, do this with Amazon ads, and then this very prescriptive thing. I think it's difficult to be prescriptive, particularly in the digital marketing world, because every business is so different. What they do, well, at least it should be different. And if it's not, they shouldn't go into business. If they don't have anything that differentiates them from their nearest 5 competitors, then they should probably not do that thing, because it's really difficult unless you have a point of difference, really difficult to get cut through in this day and age where people are really they're discerning about where they spend their money today. Listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. If people want to get a hold of you, I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and to your website in the show notes. But other than that, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. My website is also just sachaawwa.com. And if you are a small business listening to this, we also have our community on My Marketer Mentors. I'll provide that link as well, so you guys can connect with us there.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. So Sacha Awwa, what is your question for me today?
Oh, I love that. So here's a question for you. What is the one marketing channel that you wish you could do away with today?
Probably TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with TikTok. It's a place where, at least especially a couple of years ago, you could grow a following so fast on that platform, and you could go viral so fast on that platform. But on the flip side, like every aging, maturing social platform, they've started to monetize more, talk shop, everything else. Never mind where the data goes and everything else, even setting that aside, or setting aside the political element aside for the moment. I think that TikTok, the algorithm is so powerful that you can jump on it for what you think is going to be 5 minutes, and then an hour later you're going, holy crap, I just can't believe I blew an hour scrolling through stuff. That algorithm is like crack. It's really quite amazing. I actually had to really just make a conscious effort not to go on TikTok that often, because I just found that I was spending so much time on there that it was not healthy for me to spend that much time on there. But also, it's a place you, in some respects, almost have to be as well at the same time. So it does feel like you have a gun to your head to be there in some respect. And that's the one that I probably struggle with the most, that I have an absolute love-hate relationship with.
Yeah, it's so funny. I have an account. I very rarely go in it, but yes, we have to as marketers, because it's a channel that a client may be interested in. And so we have to understand the business ins and outs. But other than that, you are absolutely right. It's a death trap of a rabbit hole that I don't want to get stuck in, because I'm never coming out.
Yeah, it's addictive. It absolutely is addictive. They've done something with that algorithm that's pretty special. Listen, I super appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and experience with me and my audience. And I cannot wait to speak to you again soon.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.